Good evening, my fellow primates. Tonight, we journey deep into the ancient world, a tale of love, power, betrayal, and one of the most decisive naval clashes in history. Grab your bananas and buckle up, because we're diving into the dramatic downfall of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and the legendary Battle of Actium that changed the fate of an empire. To understand the Battle of Actium, we need to go back a few years. Rome, in the 30s BC, was a mess. Julius Caesar had been assassinated in 44 BC, and the Republic was tearing itself apart. Out of this chaos emerged three powerful men who decided to split the Roman world between them, the Second Triumvirate. First, you had Marcus Lepidus. Honestly, he's the forgotten guy of this story. Then there was Mark Antony, Caesar's right-hand man, his most trusted general, and a certified Roman badass. This guy had commanded Caesar's cavalry, helped win wars, and was basically the embodiment of Roman military power. And finally, there was Octavian, Julius Caesar's adopted son and heir. He was young, he was calculating, and he had something neither of the others could claim: Caesar's name and fortune. At first, this arrangement worked, sort of. They divided the Roman territories, hunted down Caesar's assassins, and kept the peace. But here's the thing about power-sharing agreements: they never last, and the cracks started showing when Antony went east. In 41 BC, Mark Antony summoned Cleopatra VII of Egypt to meet him in Tarsus. Now, Cleopatra wasn't just any queen. She was brilliant, wealthy beyond measure, and Egypt was the richest kingdom in the Mediterranean. But she also had a history. She'd been Julius Caesar's lover and had borne him a son, Caesarion. When Antony and Cleopatra met, it was electric. Ancient sources say she arrived on a golden barge with purple sails, dressed as the goddess Aphrodite. Whether that's true or Roman propaganda, one thing's certain: Antony was hooked. They became lovers, political allies, partners, and this absolutely terrified Octavian. Why? Because Antony didn't just fall in love with Cleopatra, he started acting like an Egyptian king. He moved to Alexandria. He had children with Cleopatra. In 34 BC, he and Cleopatra held a ceremony called the Donations of Alexandria, where they elevated Caesarion, Caesar's supposed son, with Cleopatra, giving him the title King of Kings. To Romans back in Italy, this looked like treason. Antony had married Octavian's sister Octavia as part of a political alliance, but now he'd publicly divorced her to be with Cleopatra. Romans saw Cleopatra as a foreign seductress who'd corrupted their hero. Octavian saw Caesarion as a direct threat to his claim as Caesar's only and legitimate heir. Octavian's propaganda machine went into overdrive. He painted Antony as a traitor who'd abandoned Rome for Egypt, who planned to make Alexandria the new capital, who was controlled by a foreign queen. Was it true? Some of it maybe, but Octavian was a master manipulator, and he knew how to weaponize Roman prejudice against foreigners and women in power. By 32 BC, the Second Triumvirate had officially expired, and both sides were preparing for war. Octavian even got his hands on Antony's will, probably through bribery, and publicized its contents. According to the will, Antony wanted to be buried in Alexandria alongside Cleopatra. To Romans, this was the ultimate betrayal. The Senate, now firmly in Octavian's pocket, did something clever. They didn't declare war on Antony directly. Instead, they declared war on Cleopatra. This allowed them to frame the conflict not as a civil war between Romans, but as Rome defending itself against a foreign threat. The stage was set, the armies were mobilizing, and the ancient world was about to witness one of the most consequential battles in human history. By early 31 BC, both sides were moving their pieces into position. Mark Antony and Cleopatra established their base at Actium on the western coast of Greece. They had a massive force. Ancient sources say 500 ships and 70,000 infantry. Their fleet was anchored in the Ambracian Gulf, protected by the narrow strait and a fortified position. Antony's ships were beasts, We're talking quinqueremes and even larger 10-class galleys, massive warships with multiple rows of oars, armored with bronze plating, bristling with marines and archers. These ships had towers on deck, catapults that could launch projectiles 200 yards, and were basically floating fortresses. They were built for one thing: ramming enemy ships and overwhelming them with superior firepower. Cleopatra brought 60 ships from Egypt, plus enormous wealth to fund the war effort. Her contribution gave her significant influence in the war councils, which would prove complicated. Meanwhile, Octavian was advancing from the north with 400 ships and 80,000 infantry. But his fleet was different. His commander, the brilliant Admiral Marcus Agrippa, favored smaller, faster, Liburnian vessels. These ships couldn't match Antony's galleys in a head-to-head fight, but they didn't need to. They were maneuverable, quick, and perfect for the tactics Agrippa had in mind. Agrippa was Octavian's secret weapon. While Octavian himself wasn't much of a military commander, Agrippa was a genius, and he immediately got to work. First, he captured the coastal town of Methone, cutting off Antony's supply lines from the south. Then his fleet started raiding up and down the Greek coast, harassing Antony's allies and forcing them to defend multiple positions at once. It was a brilliant strategy, death by 1,000 cuts. Antony was stuck. His massive army was camped around Actium. His fleet was bottled up in the Ambracian Gulf, and every day his position got weaker. Disease started ravaging his camp. Malaria was spreading through the crowded conditions. Deserters began trickling over to Octavian's side, bringing intelligence about Antony's plans and morale. The psychological warfare was intense. Octavian's propagandists were busy painting Antony as a Roman traitor controlled by an Eastern queen. Every deserter, every setback, every delay reinforced that narrative. In Antony's war council, tensions were rising. Cleopatra argued they should abandon the position, put garrisons in strong towns, and sail the main fleet back to Egypt, where they could regroup. It made strategic sense. Egypt was wealthy and secure, and they could rebuild their strength. But Antony's generals pushed back. They were Romans, they argued, and Romans fought on land. They wanted to abandon the fleet, march inland, and force Octavian to fight a land battle where Antony's legions would have the advantage. Antony was caught between two worlds, his Roman military pride and his partnership with Cleopatra. In the end, they chose a middle path that satisfied no one. They would attempt a naval breakout. The plan was this: load the ships with sails, unusual for a naval battle but necessary for the escape, fight their way through Octavian's blockade. Once in open water, they could either win a decisive victory, or if things went badly, use the wind to escape to Egypt with enough ships to continue the war. It was risky. It was desperate. But by late August 31 BC, Antony was out of options. On September 1st, Octavian addressed his fleet, preparing them for battle. The weather was rough, the sea was churning. Both sides knew that the next day would decide everything. September 2nd, 31 BC, dawn breaks over the Ionian Sea. The morning is tense, the water is rough from the previous day's storm, but by mid-morning it starts to calm. The trumpet sounds. This is it. Antony's fleet begins emerging from the narrow strait of the Ambracian Gulf. The sight must have been terrifying. 250 massive warships, towers bristling with armed men, the sun glinting off bronze rams and armor. Cleopatra's Egyptian squadron stays in the rear with their distinctive purple sails. Across the water, Octavian's 400 ships wait in formation. Marcus Agrippa commands the left wing. Lucius Aruntius takes the center. Marcus Lurius commands the right. And on the shore, Titus Statilius Taurus watches with Octavian's land forces, ready to support if needed. On Antony's side, he and Lucius Gellius Poplicola command the right wing. Marcus Octavius and Marcus Instius command the center, and Gaius Sosius, one of the consuls who'd fled Rome to join Antony, commands the left wing. These are all experienced commanders, many of them former consuls. This fleet is the last hope of preventing Octavian's total domination. The two fleets begin to maneuver. Antony's plan seems to be to use his powerful right wing to break through Agrippa's left, creating an escape route. But Agrippa sees it coming. Instead of engaging directly, Agrippa's ships start moving right, forcing Antony's line to extend to avoid being outflanked. It's like watching a deadly dance, the fleets spreading wider and wider across the water. Then Gaius Sosius on Antony's left wing makes his move. He launches an attack, and suddenly the battle explodes into action. But here's the thing about Antony's massive ships: they're powerful but slow. Agrippa's smaller vessels dart in and out like sharks, refusing to engage in the ramming contest Antony's forces are built for. Instead, they focus on a devastating tactic: smashing the oars of Antony's ships. Imagine you're on one of Antony's great warships. You're protected by bronze armor, you've got catapults and marines, you're basically a floating castle. But then these smaller enemy ships swarm around you, too quick to ram effectively, and they start systematically destroying your oars. Without oars, your massive ship becomes a helpless target. That's what's happening up and down the battle line. Agrippa's forces use their mobility to isolate Antony's ships, destroy their oars, then swarm them with arrows and firebombs. The battle rages for hours, ships clash, the air fills with the sounds of wood splintering, men shouting, the whistle of arrows and the crash of ballista stones hitting hulls. The sea starts to fill with debris and bodies. And then something changes. In the rear of the formation, Cleopatra's squadron sees an opening. A breeze picks up from the right direction, and suddenly her ships unfurl their sails and make a break for the open sea. Historians have debated for 2,000 years what happened next. Was it panic? A prearranged signal that Antony missed? A betrayal? A tactical retreat that made strategic sense? Whatever the truth, Antony sees Cleopatra's ships fleeing. Some say he thought it was panic and believed all was lost. Others argue he and Cleopatra had always planned to preserve forces for a continued campaign from Egypt. Antony makes a choice that will haunt his legacy forever. He transfers to a smaller, faster ship and flees after Cleopatra, taking only about 40 ships with him as an escort. The rest of his fleet? Abandoned. Confusion spreads through Antony's remaining forces. Their commander has fled. Ships begin surrendering or attempting their own escapes. Many are too damaged, too slow, too isolated. As night falls, the sea is lit by burning ships. Octavian's forces systematically capture or destroy what's left of Antony's fleet. Some captains fight to the death, others surrender, hoping for mercy. By dawn, it's over. Antony has escaped with Cleopatra, but he's left behind nearly his entire fleet. Ancient sources say 250 ships were captured or sunk, thousands of men dead or captured, but the catastrophe isn't over yet. On land, Antony's 19 legions, about 70,000 men, wait for news from the naval battle. When they learn what happened, that their commander fled with Cleopatra, the desertions become a flood. Within a week, Antony's entire land army defects to Octavian, not because they're defeated in battle, but because they've lost faith in their commander, a Roman general who abandoned his men to chase after a foreign queen. That was unforgivable. Antony and Cleopatra make it to Egypt, but they both know it's over. Octavian now controls the entire Mediterranean. It's only a matter of time before he comes for them. They spend the winter in Alexandria trying to pretend everything's normal, throwing parties, making plans that everyone knows are fantasies. Cleopatra desperately tries to negotiate, sending Octavian a gold crown and throne, offering to abdicate in favor of her children. Maybe, just maybe, they can preserve something. But Octavian wants it all. He's not interested in compromise. He strings Cleopatra along with vague promises while his forces prepare for the final invasion. In the summer of 30 BC, Octavian's armies approach from two directions. Cornelius Gallus marches from the west. Octavian himself lands at Pelusium with his main force. There are rumors that Cleopatra let Octavian's forces into Pelusium, trying to save her own skin. True or not, the symbolism is devastating. Egypt's defenses crumble without a real fight. Antony manages one last small victory outside Alexandria on July 31st, 30 BC. His cavalry repulses some of Octavian's tired soldiers. For a moment, the old Mark Antony flashes, the brilliant general, the warrior, the hero of Caesar's campaigns, but it's not enough. The next day, when Antony tries to force a general engagement, his fleet defects to Octavian. Then his cavalry goes over, his infantry melts away. Antony is alone, defeated not by military strategy but by the erosion of loyalty, the weight of his choices, the consequences of putting love before duty, or duty before love, depending on how you see it. On August 1st, 30 BC, false rumors reach Antony that Cleopatra has killed herself. Devastated, seeing no future, he stabs himself in the stomach with his sword. But the rumors are false. Cleopatra is alive, hiding in her mausoleum with her treasure. Mortally wounded but not yet dead, Antony is carried to the mausoleum. In a scene that must have been absolutely tragic, he's hoisted up through a window. Cleopatra won't open the doors for fear of capture and dies in her arms. The great Mark Antony, Caesar's general, one of the most powerful men in Rome, dies not on a battlefield, but in the arms of his lover in a foreign city, defeated and abandoned. Cleopatra is captured shortly after. Octavian's soldiers take her to the palace. She tries to negotiate, tries to charm Octavian the way she'd charmed Caesar and Antony, but Octavian is immune. He's cold, calculating, and he has plans for her. He wants her for his triumph parade back in Rome, to be paraded as a captive queen. Cleopatra realizes she has no future. On August 12th, 30 BC, she kills herself. Ancient sources say she used the bite of an asp, a small Egyptian cobra, smuggled to her in a basket of figs. Modern historians debate the method, but the result is the same. The last pharaoh of Egypt dies on her own terms, denying Octavian his prize captive. Octavian orders the execution of Caesarion, Julius Caesar's son with Cleopatra, now about 17 years old. He's the last potential rival to Octavian's claim as Caesar's heir. The boy is hunted down and killed. Cleopatra's other children, fathered by Antony, are spared and raised by Octavian's sister Octavia, the woman Antony had divorced. Egypt becomes a Roman province. The Ptolemaic dynasty, which had ruled for 3 centuries since Alexander the Great's general Ptolemy took control, ends with Cleopatra. The Battle of Actium changed everything. Octavian returned to Rome not just as a victorious general, but as the unchallenged master of the Roman world. In 27 BC, the Senate granted him the title Augustus, the revered one. He kept the appearance of republican government, calling himself princeps, first citizen, rather than king or dictator. But make no mistake, Octavian Augustus was emperor in all but name. The Roman Republic, which had existed for nearly 500 years, was dead. The Roman Empire, which would last another 500 years in the west and 1,500 years in the east, was born. To commemorate his victory, Augustus founded the city of Nicopolis, Victory City, near Actium. He built monuments decorated with the bronze rams taken from Antony's captured ships. He renovated the temple of Apollo at Actium because Apollo was his patron god. The message was clear: the gods themselves had chosen Augustus to rule. And what about Antony and Cleopatra? Despite defeating them, Augustus gave them a proper public funeral in Rome. Some of Antony's legions marched alongside their tomb. He declared a day of mourning. Why? Partly out of respect, partly political calculation. Showing mercy made Augustus look magnanimous, helped reconcile Antony's supporters to his rule. But let's talk about the love story, because that's what makes this battle so compelling, even 2,000 years later. Were Antony and Cleopatra blinded by passion? Did love doom them? Or were they actually making rational political decisions that just happened to fail? Cleopatra was trying to secure Egypt's independence and her children's inheritance. Antony was building a power base in the wealthy East. Maybe their relationship was more strategic alliance than tragic romance. The truth is, probably somewhere in between. They were powerful people who loved each other and tried to use that love to build political power. When Octavian proved more ruthless and more brilliant at propaganda and strategy, their combined forces weren't enough. The lesson of Actium isn't simple. It's not just love conquers all or power corrupts. It's more complicated. It's about timing, about propaganda, about how personal relationships intersect with political ambitions. It's about how a single battle can end republics and birth empires. It's about how even the mightiest can fall when they're outmaneuvered, outpropagandized, and ultimately outstrategized by someone more ruthless than themselves. September 2nd, 31 BC. The day an empire drowned in the Ionian Sea. The day love, power, and destiny collided off the coast of Greece. The day the ancient world changed forever. And that, my friends, is the story of the Battle of Actium. If you found this exploration of ancient history compelling, I invite you to subscribe for more in-depth historical content. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear which pivotal battles and historical events you'd like examined next. This has been your guide through the annals of history. Remember, to understand our present, we must study our past. And perhaps most importantly, never underestimate the enduring power of narrative and propaganda in shaping the course of human events. Until next time, this is Dr. Zaya Silverback saying goodbye and good night.